Foster W. Cline is an internationally renowned psychiatrist who has been a leader in his field for over 35 years. He is a co-founder of Love and Logic along with Jim Fay. He will demonstrate how you talk to kids so they listen, learn, and change their behaviors. You will discover that Dr. Cline is one of the most creative psychiatrists you will ever meet. The Love and Logic philosophy allows children to make choices and mistakes in safe situations and learn from the consequences of their choices. This approach provides children with valuable life lessons when the price tag is small. It helps children learn how to responsibly solve their own problems and helps adults reinforce positive relationships with their children without resorting to anger, threats, or lectures. Love and Logic really changes lives. And now, Dr. Foster Cline.
I know some of you will get the idea, well, it's how to discipline these kids, and it is. Well, it's how to love these kids so that they grow up respectful, responsible, and fun to be around, and it is. But what Love and Logic is really about is how to have fun parenting and how to have the tools and techniques that make it fun. Because I feel bad sometimes when I hear people say, oh, it's so hard to raise these kids in this day and age. It's such a problem, you know. And they just wring their hands about how hard it is to raise kids. And, you know, my wife and I had 7 kids still through our home, you know, foster kids and a little adopted girl and 3 birth kids. And we are not masochists, you know. And it was all that, in fact, sometimes we'd be 2/3 lazy. And if it was all that hard, we would not have had all those kids. But let me tell you what makes things easy. What makes things easy. And that is having the right tools and techniques. Because love alone isn't enough, although it's a necessary component of it and the way love is shown. But I often think about what it would be like if I was changing the oil and greasing my wife's Nissan. See? I would come out from underneath the car. This is true. About half a day later, probably, I would be spattered and covered with oil, and the EPA would be after me because oil would be everywhere. And you know what I would be saying? And I would be believing every word of it, group. I'd say, I don't care what they say. It's so hard to oil and grease these new cars. It's not like it was in the old days, I'll tell you that. But, you know, you take it down to Jiffy Lube, and those guys get it done in 15 minutes flat because they have the right tools and techniques. And they probably even have fun and make jokes while they're doing it. I wouldn't have fun doing it, I'm sure, because I wouldn't know the tools and techniques. So Love and Logic is really about, one, an attitude, and secondly, it's about tools and techniques. And the nice thing is, I know some of you here, you come and you just want, like, all right, just tell me what to say, what to do. When they're fighting like mad, what do I say? See? Well, when they're raising heck in the back seat of the car, I want to know what to say. But there are others of you that say, well, I want to know why this works. What's the attitude? The fact of the matter is that if you have the right attitude, it leads automatically to using the right tools and techniques. And if you have the right tools and techniques, and all of a sudden you say, God, this really works. I told my kid, that's really sad. I hope it gets better. And I walked off. And he said, I do too. And that was the end of it. And your eyes get about that big. It was so simple, you know. Well, all of a sudden it hooks you into the right attitude. So the tools and the techniques lead to the attitude. The attitude leads to the tools and techniques. And I want to say that I just heard from NAB Press, I'll just pick this up, I brought it out of here, that this little book now, Parenting with Love and Logic, is in its 27th printing. And it's been translated into 5 different languages around the world. And there are thousands now of classes, Love and Logic classes, all around the nation, which really, I think, are going to change, and is going to change one family at a time the way America operates. As we have people taking responsibility for themselves, being thoughtful, not expecting rescue, making good decisions about their life, feeling competent and knowing what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. So I have great hope right now for the way things are going to roll because of the massive number of Love and Logic classes all over the United States. So let's get into some of the nitty-gritty of this thing, okay? There are 2 stories that, if we understand all the nuances of the 2 stories, you honestly have all the basic parts of Love and Logic. All of Love and Logic can be understood in in two stories. One story, I was at DIA, or actually I was in Stapleton just before DIA opened a few years ago. And I was on the B concourse because I fly the hub here a lot on United, actually. I was on the United concourse. And walking down United concourse was this 4-year-old kid. See, Love and Logic starts very early. It starts really before a kid walks. It starts with Don't Touch. That's pretty early, actually. You could look at Don't Touch. Don't Touch starts pretty early. Well, anyway, there was this 4-year-old. He could have been 5. I think he was 4. He was walking down the middle of the B concourse, and you could tell this kid was about to explode, see, because he was tense. It's just, all of a sudden, I want my mom! I want my mom! He's going down the middle of the concourse wailing that he wants his mom. And, I'm watching this. I mean, this is kind of pathetic. But all of a sudden, you could see this social worker, psychiatrist type spot him, see? And it was like she'd been hit with a hunting arrow in her stomach. Oh, little boy! It was this wail of agony, see? Oh, little boy, it'll be okay. So she goes over, she scoops this kid up in her arms. You'll be okay, we can find your mom. I love my mom. Kid's still yelling. I'm watching them both go over to the United ticket counter where this kind of elderly, thin, silver-haired guy is reconciling the tickets from the plane that just left. So he's standing there, he's reconciling the tickets. She comes up, this little boy can't find his mother, this little boy can't find his mother. We need to page his mother right away. And just for a minute, a cloud crossed this guy's face. Like, get a life. But it was just there for a minute, see? And then he looked up and he says, young man, he says, I need you to quit crying. Now, right there, we're going to talk about that in more detail tonight, but look at the difference in expectation level. She says, this little boy. He says, young man. Get the difference right there in the first two words? Young man, I need you to quit crying. And this kid went, he sucked it up in a most delightful way. I was pretty, well, that worked, He said, young man, I need you to quit crying. Quit crying. He says, what did your mom tell you to do? And I'm thinking, yeah, what'd you tell him to do? This little kid, sit over there on one of those chairs. He says, young man, why did your mother ask you to do that? He says, she's going to the bathroom. Right. And what did you do instead? Got up and walked around. Well, what seems to be the problem now, young man? I don't know where she is. Well, do you think you've learned something from this? See, this guy could have stepped out of Love and Logic. I am watching him with utter awe, So what have you learned from this? Meanwhile, the lady is standing there. She's getting torqued out of shape because this guy isn't paging this kid's mommy now. She's getting upset that there's not an immediate rescue, see? And always at times like this, I think those of us who have faith, you take every opportunity to pray, see? So I'm saying my little prayer like I always do at times like this, along the lines of, dear God, please let my grandkids marry his grandkids and not her grandkids. That's the little prayer I'm saying while this whole thing is unrolling, see? And I'm thinking that the very next time that mom says, Ricky, go sit in a chair, and he hustles over and sits there, that she'll never realize that's because he had Love and Logic from a United ticket agent rather than a rescue from an upset lady or man on that concourse, see? So that story says a lot about Love and Logic. First thing that we decide as parents is that every mistake our kid makes is a learning experience. Every mistake is a learning experience. Now, that leads, see, all this is very logical. That's why we call it Love and Logic. Not every mistake is a learning experience. You can look at people out in America as a whole and say, well, I don't think every mistake is a learning experience. They make the same mistake over and over again, you know. I mean, you look around, there are a lot of people that are making the same unhappy mistake. Whatever it is, it's an unhappy thing, and it goes on and on, see. So, no, they're not learning from their mistakes. So the question is then, if love and logic says that mistakes are learning experiences, then what makes something a learning experience? See? And so for those of you here who are postgraduate students, a learning experience only occurs when a person is allowed to S the C. What's the C? Consequences. Suffer. So you say, oh, that's the hard one. Suffer the consequences. But love and logic says early on in life, you see, we don't want our kids to suffer. There's not a loving parent here who wants their kid to suffer. So there are two ways of fixing it so they don't suffer as much. These are the two great choices that every parent runs into. One choice is, and this has basically been the American choice in the last 30 years to a certain extent, and that is, take the problem away, fix it. Fix it. Take the problem away. Rescue the situation. Take the problem away. The other way of decreasing suffering is to raise individuals who cope. Raise individuals who can handle adversity. As I'm making this tape now about parenting in the new millennium, all of our papers are filled with rage. Road rage, everyone's talking about rage here, rage there, on the job rage. I read in a Spokane paper 2 days ago about desk rage. People are doing workshops on desk rage. Well, desk rage, work rage, road rage. What's all this rage coming from? Basically, you can say that you can blame guns and you can blame teachers, and there's all kinds of blame you can make, but rage basically is a sign of an inability to cope with adversity. It doesn't matter whether it's somebody cutting a car in front of you or somebody not getting their way at work or whatever it is. Rage comes from an inability to handle adversity. And if there's anything, and easy frustration, getting mad over nothing, because the situation isn't right, it isn't fixed, it's not going my way. I'm mad, see? And what love and logic parents do is raise kids who can handle adversity. Because rather than trying to take the adversity away, they help the kids cope. Let me give you an example of how you help kids cope. And see, all of my examples you can see for yourselves. They're just open our eyes and see. It's up on Evergreen Lake, which is not very far from here. Evergreen Lake, every fall when the lake freezes over, all the young moms of Jefferson County take their kid up to Evergreen Lake to go skating on the lake. And they all have their little double runner skates, and their moms, dads all take them out of the ice, and then they say, go Jose, go George, and they go, and the little kid goes out on their double runner skates, and all of a sudden, you know how the ice slants down, see, where it goes from the edge down, they go, all of a sudden, wham, and they all omelet their heads on the ice, see, you can see them. You can stand there and watch it happen. There goes one, there goes two, See them all omelet their heads on the back of the ice. Now, at that point, see, these kids are like 2, 3, 4 years old. At that point, the mothers of the world raise the kids who can cope or the kids who don't cope. And they divide themselves into two groups, the Are You Hurts and the Kerboomers. Those are the two groups of moms. The Kerboomers are the Are You Hurts, see? And as these kids go out, they go, whop! The kids sit there like that. Group one mom yells, Ricky, are you hurt? You can see this kid get up. Yeah! They go right back. You bet they're hurt, see? Because the expectation is, oh, you're hurt. Oh, how I could help you, see? Then you see another kid go out on the ice, whop, and you think, that was a hard one, and you're watching the kid, and their mom say, Ricky, kerboomy. Oh, yeah, kerboomy. You see this kid get up and say, yeah, kaboomy, and they just keep trudging out, see? And the hidden message is there is that you can handle it. You can handle it. See? And one of the one of the problems that we have as parents is two things. Two things get good, loving parents like you. See, I'm going to assume that this is a group of very, very loving parents because we found that the solid child abusers tend not to come to parenting groups. So this is a group of parents that are basically pretty loving group of parents, okay? And two things make parenting difficult for this group of parents. Two things make it difficult. First thing is, you can't make them not be self-destructive. That's very irritating. You know, they won't do their homework. They fight with their friends. They get on fusses at the bus. You know, they wait till the last minute. You know, they do wrong things. And we have warned them about it. It is so frustrating, see, so frustrating. So the first frustrating thing is we can't make them do it right. That's very frustrating. Then the second thing that's frustrating is that when they do it wrong, most of us feel like we got to fix it. Now, I forgot my book. I forgot my chemistry book. We have a test right now, and you need to bring it in right away. I warn you not to forget that book. And we bring the book into them, you know, or take the tuba to school, or talk to the bus driver. I mean, it's so hard to fix all these problems. It is just so hard, see. And, I mean, you can see a group of parents getting together when, you know, and they're talking about how hard it is to raise kids this day. They say, oh, I know, Robert waits till the last minute to get his school paper done, and then the printer doesn't work, and then I'm the one who has to fix it. Oh, I know just what you see. Janie came out for church, and she was wearing those clothes. I said, you can't wear that for church. She says, the other isn't clear. It's so hard to get him ready for church. Donald won't even get up in the morning. That's his problem. I have to call him 15 times to even get him up. It's so hard to raise kids in this day and age. It just wears you out. Everyone's sitting around, yeah, it's so hard to raise kids in this day and age, you know. Get them up, you know, make them dress right, make them get their homework done. And they won't, you know, let me say this right now. Nobody can make another person not be self-destructive. And it's basically, to be honest with you, the message of love and logic, in that we will always give kids choices to make mistakes so that they can learn from them if the cost isn't too high. Now, I heard recently of some lady who said, well, yeah, that love and logic is just for older kids, but it's not for younger kids. It starts very, very early. It starts when they're sitting in a high chair. And a mom says, oh, would you like to throw things and have the meal over, you know? Or would you like to eat in the high chair and have food? I mean, you can have your food or you can throw other things. We have a big choice here. And I remember when a dad was giving a kid a choice, would you either like to stand up on the floor or sit in the high chair? Which would you like to do? The kid plopped down, and it was a very little kid. He couldn't believe that giving a kid a choice worked so well so young, see? And see, the choices are implied. Like, let's say these steps here. There's a 2-year-old. I'm just getting into some of this stuff early. Some of you have little kids. Like, there's a kid, and he's walking up and down these steps like this. See? And then he's walking back and down like that. You know, little legs going. You know that kid's going to fall. See? Now, we have a lot of choices there, because most of us have little kids who are obedient when they're small. We can say, Ricky, don't go up and down those steps. You're going to fall. Come stand here. See? Because I don't want my kid to suffer. There's going to be a fall here, and I can see that they could fall on those steps. Or I could say, they're padded. I don't know. They're about 6 inches for each plop. The kid will survive it fine. As you know, God rubberizes small children. So how do I give a little kid a choice? I give the little kid a choice simply by saying, Ricky, there could be a big boom boom. See? You could play on the steps or go up and down. There could be a big boom boom here. No. He goes up and down the steps pretty soon. See, always, I want to tell you this as young parents. Your kids are always going to do things that you don't think are wise. That goes all the way through teenage years. What they want to do in teenage years, they want to do this, they want to do that. They want to go up and down the steps. They're going to always do things that aren't very good ideas. And most of you, when your kids are small, can say, don't do that, and they will obey you. The problem is what happens when they're teenagers. See, I'm for whatever works. Love and logic is very pragmatic. And you can almost order a little kid around, and they'll obey you. And we don't necessarily have time to go into all the reasons why that is. But basically, you can tell a little kid what to do, and they'll do it, and they'll think you're a great parent, and you'll know you're a great parent. You have a pretty good little kid. But where the chickens come home to roost is in junior high school, you know. And all of a sudden, making them do it right doesn't work. So what I'm suggesting to you here, and what Love and Logic teaches, is that when your kids are small, starting at 2, and as they get older, you give them as many choices as you can. And I was about to say that your kids are going to make poor choices. And you're always going to say ahead of time to them, honey, I don't think this is a very good idea. I don't think that's very wise. No, it'll be fine. I don't have to do the paper tonight. I'll have time tomorrow night. See, they're going to want to do something that's going to make a mistake. And you said it's not a wise idea. That's time, again, that thoughtful parents go to prayer. Prayer helps. So you say, I don't think it's a very good idea. I'm going to do it anyway. Then, prayer time. Dear God, please let this go bad. Please let it go bad. I mean, if you warn them that something isn't a good idea and they do it anyway and it works out well, you look like an idiot. So you do not want that to happen. You have to pray things go bad. And usually that's one that God is particularly thoughtful about answering. I'll have to tell you that. They often do go bad, see? And then you don't say, I told you so. Didn't I warn you about that? Didn't I tell you about it? You say, oh, that's too bad. Well, what do you think you've learned from this? See? Nothing. I haven't learned anything from it. Oh, well, that's so sad, you know. Some people it takes more time than others, you know. It's so simple. You see, as soon as you start figuring that you can't make somebody not be self-destructive, and as soon as you come to the realization that rescue, see, there's another problem with rescue. Rescue, by definition, makes the assumption that the person or people or group can't cope. And so whenever you read the papers and you read about some person, some group, or any individual being rescued, you will read that the hidden agenda is that person can't cope for one reason or another. And then people become less and less able to cope as the rescue takes place. So that as we live in a very rescuing society right now, we don't even realize that the expectations of people's basic brilliance has gone way down. And those of you who have a little infant recently and you bought a stroller, you've seen the sign in the stroller with the little directions. Remove baby before folding stroller. Oh, okay. NyQuil. What about this one? This medication may make you drowsy. A sleeping medication. It may make you drowsy. See, there's a basic assumption that has started to take place that people just don't figure out a lot these days. And I suppose a lot of you fly, but I remember when DIA was first built. See, I'm giving you the idea of what happens when people are rescued too much. When DIA was first built, just like the rest of the world, on the moving walkways there, you're moving along on the moving walkways. And in the rest of the world, if you travel the world, in the rest of the world, what comes out of the speakers group? Do you know what comes out of speakers? Music. Music comes out of the speakers on the moving walkway in all the other countries of the world. What comes out of the speakers down at DIA? The moving walkway is about to end. Look down. The moving walkway is about to end. Look down. You know? It's like, give me a break. Well, I want to tell you what happens, because this is a true story. DIA, when it first came out, did have music. Had it for about 8 months. And then all of a sudden, I was on the moving walkway. Moving walkway is about to end. Look down. So I'm low-grade snippy and irritated about it because of the assumption of basic dumbness that has taken place so often wherever we go in America, you know. And so I'm being a little snippy and a little irritated when I walk into the red carpet room. And the red carpet room opens up right on those moving walkways. So those doors go psst, psst, and they open up, and the people walk off the walking runway, and they go walking walkway, and they go right into the red carpet room. So the little lady is sitting there, the receptionist is sitting in the red carpet room, and I'm being kind of two-thirds snarky, and I'm saying, well, you know, I noticed that they always had music before, and now they're telling people to look down. The moving walkway's about being looked down. And she said, oh, Dr. Cline, she said, they had to do that. People were stacking up like cordwood. And I'm thinking, man, they don't stack up like cordwood in the rest of the world. Yeah, it's pathetic. So that when you see parents, this is true, when you see certain parents that give their kids lots of rules and lots of orders and lots of protection, they're always making sure it goes right and all that, they can say, well, yeah, it's really easy for you to say, let them figure things out for yourself, but you don't have a kid like John, see? You know, that's true, I don't have a kid like John. But it becomes a chicken and an egg issue of which comes first, the order, controlling, rule-giving parent, or the kid who needs the rules. Like, let's take something else that's very common in our society right now. It's becoming more and more common on the new TVs, is the V-chip. The V-chip is something that goes in the TV to make sure that your kid doesn't watch any sex, violence, or bad stuff on TV, which I have to say, for America, I think is a very good thing, because most of the parents out there are not a lot like you. They don't know where their kids are. They could care less. They're not around. You know, they're not loving, available parents, okay? But for your kids, for you guys' kids, every time you do something like put a V-chip into the TV, what does it say? It says the kid doesn't have enough self-discipline or enough ability to decide for himself what he or she needs to watch. Even then, a V-chip might be a good idea for my daughter if those first boys she dated came with V-chips. That's really good. I'll just flip David off, you know. I'll just take his little V-chip and I'll say, David's flipped off. But doesn't work. David doesn't come with a V-chip. So somewhere, someplace, somehow, my kid has to learn to say, this is fun, and it's probably low-grade addictive, but I need to learn to say no to it. And do I want my kid to learn on David, or do I want to learn on the TV set? I have to make all these choices all the time of what is my kid capable of learning and figuring out for themselves. So I'm going to give my kid a lot of choices, because one of the things that distinguishes great leaders and great kids from the ones who aren't so great is the ability to make wise choices. I mean, if you just want to say, what makes a great leader? Great leader is a person who makes wise choices. That's basically what it is. How does a person learn how to make wise choices? Because they've made some bad ones. That's why. In fact, I cannot tell you how many kids of my foster kids or other kids that walk through our home, and I have said to them in all honesty, I have said, you know, guys, you have probably the brightest, the most brilliant, wisdom-filled father on God's good earth. I mean, you are so lucky to have just a basic, brilliant dad like me. And do you know how I got to be that way, David? Do you know how I got to be that way? No, because I made so many mistakes. That's why. And I've been watching your operations recently, David. And I think you're going to grow up a lot brighter than me. I think you're going to be a genius, David. Oh, the mistakes you make, lucky child. See? So yeah. So basically, I want to, and what Love and Logic teaches is that always we can say no to our kids, and they better darn well obey us. In other words, Love and Logic is a parenting style that says, well, what's your name here? Allison. If I said jump to you, really, I hope I'm coming through the way I mean to come through. But if I say jump, Allison, what are you supposed to say back? Thank you. She said, how high? And I say, thank you. But the reason it's so neat to have a dad like me is I hardly ever tell you how high to jump. Isn't that the beauty of it? You know, I don't want to be a dad who goes around and says, jump, 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 jump. How sad. But when I do say it, see, love and logic is a way of handling kids so that you don't have to paint yourself into some kind of corner by giving them an order that they disobey, and then you get mad, because the kids learn from the mistakes that they make. And the other day I heard, they said, well, that's easy for you to say, but these little kids will go out, you say, if you don't wear a coat, you'll freeze, and, and they don't want to wear a coat. They'll be frozen before they even know it. Well, you don't let a kid go out in a snowstorm without a coat when they're a toddler. But you can let them go out without a coat in your car. That's a great thing, because no kid is frozen to death in a car with a heater that works. See? It's a wonderful thing. And I remember when all of our kids were small. They're very small kids. You say, we always set the model. We're going to talk about that, because that's the other example we're going to give with love and logic. We say, oh, it looks really cold out. I want to wear a coat. And everyone says, because these little kids want to be like us. So right away you say, oh, it looks really cold out. I'm going to want to wear a coat. But sometime when they're about 3 or 4, I don't want to wear a coat because I'm not going to be cold because I don't want to wear a coat. Oh, okay, let's go. I always wear a coat. I'm so worried about being cold. I remember when Andy was in the back seat of the car once. We were up in Evergreen those days. It was pretty cold out. I remember we were driving along, and Hermie's in the front seat of the car, She's driving. I'm sitting over in the passenger side. Pretty soon in the back seat here. And I remember sweet Herbie said, she says, Andy, she said, do you have goosebumps? Yeah, I have goosebumps. She says, oh, that's so wonderful, she said, because when you have goosebumps, she says, that's God's way of making all those little hairs on your arms stand up so you're not so cold. And are your teeth chattering right now? Yeah, they are. Oh, that's so wonderful, because that's God's way of working all the muscles, and it kind of heats you up. You know what this kid says? Well, God isn't doing a good enough job. And next time I'm going to wear my coat. Oh, wise child. See? No, you don't want to give them choices where they're going to die or something. Well, depending on your kid. No, just erase that. Some people take everything so seriously. This brings us to wise parents always keep their sense of humor. When you see someone who's lost their sense of humor, you're seeing someone who's they're either about to burn out or they've always been that way, which is sad too, so either way. But you keep your sense of humor, see, and it serves you goes a long, long way. So as we look at what this ticket agent did, when we just look at that one example, we see that the kid made a mistake and he didn't get mad at the kid. He didn't say, look, your mother told you to sit in the chair and you didn't sit in the chair, and now she has to look at you and we have to pay you. Didn't get mad at the kid. The next thing that he did is that love and logic teaches that all heart-to-heart talks are almost always pure questions. See, in other words, there are a lot of parents out there who give their kids a lot of lectures, tell them what to do, then they pay $150 an hour to send the kid off to some therapist, and all the therapist does is ask them questions and wondering about how their miserable life is going and how sad it is for them. And what Love and Logic does is, hey guys, save the money, do it yourself. Ask the questions, wonder about it. See, the difference between a really great parent and a mediocre parent, frankly, is that it's easy, and for counseling too, it's very easy to have the right answers. But the exciting thing is to ask the right questions. See, that's why really Socrates had to drink the hemlock. Not because he told the Athenians what jerks they all were. They would have handled that just fine. But he was a gadfly, and he asked them all these questions that made them look at themselves, and they didn't like that. And they said, oh, if you're going to ask questions like that, then you have to drink the hemlock, because they didn't like what they saw when he asked the questions. So you ask your kids questions. Well, honey, are you planning on taking 3rd grade again next year, or is that not really your plan? See? Is it your plan to go to Disneyland with us this summer, or do you think you'll probably be in summer school? What's your plan, summer school or Disneyland, see? I mean, a teenager. I mean, a lot of kids, honey, die before they're 21. Do you think that could happen to you, or do you think that's probably not your style? Because recently, the way you've been living your life, I was thinking you might not make it. That's what I was thinking. So what's your thought on this? See? Questions, questions, questions. If I could get you over the idea that one person can stop another person from being self-destructive by telling them to do it right, I feel like all of tonight would have been a great, valuable time for you. If just that one point was given. People have to be self-motivated, have to make their own decisions about whether or not they want to be self-destructive or not self-destructive. But see, you're going to say, well then, okay, Foster, the thoughtful people, you're going to say, that's all very well and good, but then, what if the consequences don't work? And well, what else is there besides consequences? See, people learn the important things in life in only two ways. Love and Logic calls them the two E's. And one of the things that we've talked about so far is we've talked about experience. And that people only learn from experience if they, S the C, suffer the consequences. And so we allow our kids to suffer, but we help them cope with the suffering so they don't suffer as much. And we help them make good decisions, and we have high expectations. But what's the other E? People learn the important stuff in life by either experience or example, modeling. You know what? If you're really, really lucky, you could grow up like me. Wouldn't that be great? No, I mean, we wouldn't say that to our kids because it is a little tacky, you know. But the point is, I remember once my wife and I were doing a couples group. We do couples groups around the United States. And I remember this one really nice and great lady. We were talking about, you know, who are the lucky, if you could grow up to be anybody, who would you want to grow up to be? If you could have your pick of whoever you could be, fictitious or real in history, who would you like to be if you were to live your life again? And this lady says, oh, I know that real easily. She says, one of my kids. I mean, her kids did have a lot of advantages, too, I'll say that. But she was a pretty red-hot mom, see? So kids learn things by example. Now let's look at the second story that gives the love and logic principles. From the first story, we've learned you don't have to get mad. You don't have to tell them what to do. You ask them a lot of questions. You commiserate about how bad it went for them. And you ask them what have they learned from the mistake. That's example number one. Example number two, you're driving along. Kids are fighting in the back seat. Move over. Stop it. I was here first. Don't you shove me. Mom, Dad. You know the noise in the back seat. There are a number of ways of handling that. One of the most fun ways of handling it is to look around. You kids, shut up! Kind of wave at them. It really makes the day for the people in the car behind, you know? It's like, oh, wow, look at that. See, it's kind of fun. It's free. They don't pay for it. It's a good deal. It's a good deal, see? But there are other ways of handling it. There are other ways of handling it. There are a lot more. I heard once that in some parenting book, someone said, well, if the kids are making noise in the backseat of the car, if they're raising heck and high water, just pull over and stop the car and tell them you're stopping until they settle down. Well, hey, I'm the one who usually wants to get someplace. I'm supposed to pull over while these little sentient beings make their noise in the back of the seat till they're ready to be quiet, and then I can go on? Give me a break. I don't think so. No, but when they're making noise in the back seat of the car, and your spouse is in the car, or your boyfriend, or your girlfriend, someone else is in the car. Actually, nobody has to be in the car. If no one's in the car, talk to yourself. Because I got to tell you, when you talk to yourself, the kids really listen up. You know, it's like, what's he saying? What's he saying? I mean, they really want to hear that one, okay? And the conversation you have goes something like this. It goes like, honey, are you really happy right now? No, I'm not that happy right now. I'm not all that happy. Well, sweetheart, why is that? Well, because my auditory environment's being hassled. Whenever my auditory environment's being hassled, I'm not that happy. Oh, I can understand that, sweetheart, but I think your auditory environment will be wonderful the last mile home. Do you really, sweetheart? Why is that? Because we'll be the only ones in the car. Oh, what a good idea. What a good idea. So a mile from home, you pull the car over. Okay, guys, out. But it's raining. I know, I prayed for that. Every so often, you'll hear, sometimes I go to audiences and they'll say, but they could be kidnapped. That's the biggest worry, is the kid could be kidnapped. You know, I found out something about the people who worry about their kid being kidnapped. Group, it's a secret hope. Because the people who talk like that raise kids that most of us would not take off the shelf. I can promise you that. It's no wonder they hope the kid is kidnapped. No, but the problem is nobody probably wants the kid, so the kid won't be kidnapped. Well, then there's another person, but they could get killed on the highway. Well, you don't want to let them out on cold facts. I mean, we always had the basic dachshund rule in Love and Logic. Dachshunds are they're not real bright dogs. I know there might be some dachshund lovers here, but I mean, we've had all kinds of breeds, and dachshunds are down there somewhere. But, I mean, the rule of thumb is if the average dachshund can make it down that road and not get killed, your kid can't. That's the rule. You say, God, that's a really busy street. The average dog's going to get killed on that street. Then don't let your kid out on it. You just sort of have to make the assumption, my kid's as bright as a dog. If a dog can make it, my kid can. Dog can't make it, my kid can. So, and with real little kids, of course, you can't let them out a mile from home. You have to say, see over there, honey? That's our house. Do you know why I'm happy now? Why? Because you won't be in the car with me when I drive there. Out. Bye. And it had to be a line of sight or whatever it is. Now, let's look at this a minute. See, there are a lot of parents out there that when their kids are teenagers, they talk to them like this. This is what kinds of things they say. Now you have to decide for yourself what's best for you. And if your friends want you to do something that's not good for you, if your friends are hassling you, if they want to do something that in your heart you know isn't really a good thing for you to do, you're just going to have to separate yourself from your friends. You're going to say they can still be your friends, but you're not going to go rip off the radios, or you're not going to go take the drugs, or you're not going to skip school. You got to learn to think for yourself. You got to do what makes you feel good and you know is best for you. See, you can't say that to a teenager. It's almost too late. That's something that they have to experience. And when I say to my kid, see, when they're small, honey, I know you're really happy with your behavior right now. You feel so good about it. But to tell you the truth, it's a low-grade hassle to me. So why don't you whip up to your room, look in the mirror, find an audience that appreciates you, and talk to it. See? But, honey, it's not me. See, it's not me. I'm not into that behavior. See? See, that's what leads the kid when they're a teenager to say, guys, you might be into that behavior, but I don't think it's best for me. You guys go on by yourself. And they separate. One of the problems that a lot of parenting things teach, other than Love and Logic, is that somehow if you talk nice to your kids, if you're always nice, if you do what they want, if you just are basically sweet, make them happy, give them what they want, they'll grow up to be responsible, respectful people. Absolutely not. It's the way you allow your kids to treat you that raises their self-image, not the way you treat the kids. Now, naturally, I'm talking to a loving, giving, basically neat audience. I'm not talking to solid child abusers here, hopefully. So, but you see, any time you see a kid who gives their parents a hard time, whines at them, is nasty to them, won't take no for an answer, doesn't have basic German Shepherd, come sit, go, no stay, that kind of stuff, then you're looking at a kid who has a low self-image. And see, a lot of people in my field even say, well, the reason that kid the reason he treats his parents that way, the reason he talks that way to authority figures is because he has a poor self-image. No! It starts the other way around. People starting at 2 allow their kids to give them a hard time, and that's what produces the poor self-image. See? Because your kids put you inside them as their guiding light. In other words, they become like you. So that when you allow your kid to make your life 3 degrees short of miserable or something like that, then they end up making their life 3 degrees short of miserable. So once parents allow a kid to be disrespectful, be nasty, give them a hard time, whine at them or whatever it is, they raise a kid with a poor self-image. Again, it starts very early. My wife and I were giving a marital workshop in Texas at a dude ranch for a bunch of couples. They had kids there, and the kids came too. This one, we went down in the morning to a morning breakfast barbecue, and this woman was taking her little 3-year-old kid along down to the barbecue, to the breakfast, and my wife and I were walking behind, and I don't think she knew that we were there. And this little kid was walking beside her. He's about 3. He says, "Mommy, hold my hand." You know, in that voice that makes you want to take a shower. You know, "Mommy, hold my hand." So she slows down, holds his hand. "Mommy, come over here and look at this." So she hustles over and looks at it. She says, "Mommy, slow down." So she starts walking slower. "Mommy, come over here." So she hustles over. And then she was hustling over. She looked back and she saw Hermie and I. And I think for just a flash, she could see herself through somebody else's eyes almost. And slightly embarrassed, she says, "Oh," she says, "Troy's so demanding. I don't know why." Well, we know why, because it works. It works. Every parent has to decide what they expect from their kids. Every government has to decide what they expect from the population. What do we expect people to be able to do, to handle, to think, to do for themselves? And the expectation level makes a huge difference. A huge difference. How high are our expectations of our kids? This was really brought home to me when we were trimming a Christmas tree on a church narthex a couple years ago up in Sandpoint. And 2 young moms had 2 4-year-old kids. And both nice young moms, and they were on the committee decorating the tree. And one kid was a kid probably that if you invited the mom and the husband over for dinner, you'd say, "Leave the kids," you know. So you would not probably take the kid off the shelf, but not a really bad kid either. The other kid was a really nice little kid, and so the 2 moms had their 2 4-year-olds, and we were trimming the tree. Okay, we're trimming the tree. And these kids were helping us trim it, and of course they weren't very much help, because they were putting stuff it had to be moved back up, and they'd eat a few pine needles or whatever kids that age do, you know. They like to be like adults, and they were having fun having them there, you know. And the kids had their eye on these big silver balls, because after we got everything else on the tree, we were going to put these big silver ornaments on the tree. So the kids were really kind of waiting to put the silver ornaments on, see. And but then the committee of the 5 of us, after we trimmed the tree for a bit, we stood back and we looked at it and we thought, you know, it'd probably be better without those silver balls, because we'd made it kind of gold and red, and we just decided, for one reason or another, the silver balls, probably we shouldn't put the silver balls up. One mom. Which mom was it, or which kid? "Oh!" Again, it's like being hit with a hunting arrow. "The children will be so disappointed," she said. "We better let them put up 1 or 2. Well, nobody validated that. Nobody said they were about their business, so I think she took it as a low-grade negative, which it probably was. And then she says, "Well, if we don't let it put up 1 or 2, we better put the silver balls up, because they'll want to get in them and put them on the tree." And finally, the other young mom with the great kid snapped around, almost like finally, it's like she'd had enough and she'd almost been slapped, and she said, "Well," she said, "Nancy, there is another option here." And Nancy said, "What?" And she said, "We could tell the children no." You could just tell them no, they can't put the silver balls on the tree. Or you could just see Nancy, new thought, you know. No, tell them no. It's a small thing. But you see, if a kid can't handle not putting a silver ball on a tree when they want to, then how are they going to handle other things that are so much more important in their lives? So what we look at then, as we look at our kids, is really what is our expectation level? What do we expect from them? I have a neat kid who's probably here tonight. We wanted to not, this is not rehearsed, but Gabe Ebert is here. Gabe, are you here? Did you come in? Are you here yet? Ah! Well, we decided it wouldn't be very good to rehearse this ahead of time because it wouldn't be fair to you because you do things with your kids that aren't rehearsed. So, but we decided we would do this on homework, right? Homework is an issue. And so I told Gabe he could be as snarky or as nasty as he wanted to be or as he didn't want to be here. Okay. I think this is on for you, Gabe. So I think you can hold this, even though you are low-grade snarky or whatever. You can have that. And the first thing I always start out doing when we want to talk to our kids is, remember, great parents always start out with what? Questions. Which, if you have a really nasty kid, what they always say is, I'm not going to give you a chance to say this, but I don't think you would, but he could. A lot of them say, you ask them, I don't know. They always say, I don't know. See? And the cookbook answer for that is to put your arm around the kid and say, you know, you may not know a lot, but you're honest about it. That's what I appreciate. See? That kind of ends that one, okay? There's a lot of cookbook responses that, you don't love me, you don't love me. Cookbook response to that one. You know what I appreciate, Ricky? Right now, you see how hard to love you are. That's what I appreciate. See, there's a lot of cookbook responses. See, the cookbook responses always drop the problem back on the kid in a loving way so that they look at themselves. And they have to make decisions about how they want to live their life, see? And they're unarguable. Okay, so I'd say, so I'm starting out with a question. I'd say, Gabe, how do you think you've been doing your chores lately? Because we're talking about how to take care of yourself here. See, that's why. How do you think your chores have been going lately?
Fine, I did them today.
Did you? Yeah, it's kind of surprising. I said, yeah, you did. You did them kind of. Do you feel like you did a great job, or do you feel like it was sort of a halfway job, or what's your thought on how you did it today?
I did them. You asked me to do them, and I did them, all right?
Is this like Gabe, would you just rather forget this conversation right now and not have it, or where are you at with it?
Dude, I did my chores, all right?
You did do your chores.
I did.
What I would appreciate, this is what I would appreciate, Gabe, is our having a conversation about how you do your chores. Maybe you don't want to have a conversation about that, which if you don't, would be sad for you, but I also understand. So you need to decide whether or not we need to have a talk about it or whether you don't want to talk about it. Because I think there are some good solutions that you could like and buy into. But if you don't want to talk about it, then I can come up with my solution. I was just thinking that you might like some of your solutions better, so you got to decide.
All right, we'll talk.
You know what? I don't think you're quite in the mood right now. If you're in the mood by 3 o'clock tomorrow, we can talk about it then. And if you're not in the mood, things will happen anyway, so don't worry about it, okay? Thanks. At that point, the kids say, what was he going to say? What was he going to say? See, I don't like talking. If you talk to a kid who is snarky, nasty, it's a sad situation for you, and they don't listen anyway. So it's better just to say, there's so many times I've said to a foster kid, it looks like you aren't ready to listen right now. And, hey, I can understand that. I was just thinking you'd be a lot happier if we had a happier conversation. So if you'd like to have a happier conversation the next 3 hours, let me know. And if you're not there, that's okay, too. It'll all work out within 3 hours. Okay, I'm ready. What do you want to talk about? See, because my solutions always take care of me. They don't necessarily take care of the kid. Because I want to set the right model where I put myself first in a loving way. And I want the chores to be done correctly. And so let's just say, so what I would say, so if he was really nasty, I wouldn't have a conversation with him. Because he won't listen anyway, guys. I'd say, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Or I'd come up with my own solution. In fact, one foster kid, I'll say this, Gabe, before we go into it. I remember one kid in our home. We were having dinner, and all of a sudden a neighbor kid came over. The neighborhood kid walked into the kitchen, and all of a sudden started feeding the dog. This kid said, what's he doing over here? And I said, well, he's feeding the dog. Well, that's my job. Not anymore. I said, I'm paying him to do it. You never paid me. Yeah, but that's because I fed you. I never pay people that I feed. So. I don't feed him, so I'm paying him. No. Well, how much are you paying him? All of your allowance. Oh, my allowance? That's a lot. Hey, David, it's overtime for him, you know. Overtime's expensive, you know. I mean, I can always figure out how to... In fact, I remember once we had a neighbor kid come over, and the kids were supposed to clean up, and they hadn't cleaned up, and I remember saying to the kids, and I'm going to get to you, Gabe, here. Saying to the kids, well, if you guys don't clean up, don't worry about it. I'll clean it up. And I could see the neighbor kids thinking, yeah, that'd be good. You can clean it up. And I remember my kid went in the elbow and said, you never, ever want my dad to do your job. See, that does not work out well, okay? So, I mean, one of the things my kids always knew, if I said, hey, the job wasn't done, don't worry about it. No problem. I did it. There's problems. But not for me, okay? That's the difference. Okay. So what I want to say, Gabe, is, so do you think we can talk some about the chores? This is what I was thinking, is, are doing the chores kind of a drag for you?
Yeah.
Are there some chores that you would, like right now, your job is to do the dishes and feed the dog and do the walkway. See, I always give my kids lots of chores to do because it raises their self-image. Because if you have a high self-image, it's because of what you've accomplished in life. So I always give them a lot to accomplish. And if kids aren't good for free labor, what are they good for? So I give my kids a lot to accomplish. So I'd say, well, so your job right now is to shovel the walk and feed the dog and do the dishes this week. Do you think, really, is that too much, or is it, what do you really feel about it? How do you feel?
Well, see, the dog's cool, so I like to feed the dog. But,
Okay.
I don't know, the dishes are a little much, I think.
Are they?
Yeah.
Well, considering, see, I don't want to do the dishes because I sort of paid for them and paid for the food. So I'm kind of down on doing dishes. Mom's kind of down on doing dishes because she kind of fixes the meal, you know, and prepares it and puts the food on it on the first place and gets them on the table. So considering that Mom doesn't want to do the dishes and that I don't want to do the dishes, I don't know. I mean, what's your thought on it? I mean, maybe Jesse can do it. What's your thought? I mean, I don't think Jesse would want to do them all the time either. So what's your thought? I mean, the main thing to me is that the dishes get done. So what's your thought?
Well, you don't want to do them, Mom doesn't want to do them, and neither do I.
Okay. So none of us will do them. I mean, I just thought that might end up sad for you, but we could work it that way.
I don't know.
See, what kids want kind of way down deep in their heart is, I want to operate this in a way that you're mad at me. But all of a sudden when you say to the kid, this could be sad for you, all of a sudden it brings about new ways of thinking, you know? New ways of thinking. So yeah, well, I mean, we could pay somebody else to do it. I could pay Jesse during your week because I think maybe he'd like to do it maybe more than you, or he's willing to do it. Or I could do it and pay myself. There's a number of ways that this could be done, but I was just thinking you might end up happier if you just took your turn at it. But I don't know. What's your thought on it? It does have to be, you agree it has to be done, right?
Yeah.
And I'm saying since I paid for the food and got it, I don't want to do it, but I would trade places. I'll do the dishes if you pay for the food. I mean, that'd work.
Well, that might not work.
That might not work. All right,
Yeah.
well, we'll erase that one then.
Yeah.
So what's your thought then on the dishes?
You know, that brings up a good point. Maybe I'll do it my turn if I get an allowance raise.
Really? A kid off the old block. So you're saying that if you do the dishes once a week, you want an allowance raise? I might give you a raise and allowance, but it might not. I mean, maybe you deserve a raise and allowance, but I wouldn't do it because you do the dishes, because I don't get an allowance for paying for the food. So, I mean, there's some things that you just do because you're part of the family, you know what I mean? And I always gave you your allowance because you were part of the family. Although I'm happy to use it for jobs you don't do. Don't get me wrong there, but I mean, you just get it because you're my kid, and I like giving you an allowance. So now so we'll leave the allowance thing aside. Maybe you need a raise and allowance. Right now, what I'm interested in is what's your thought on the dishes?
Well, I know someone needs to clean them, right? But
Right.
I don't know.
I think if I did give you a raise and allowance, we could use your whole allowance to pay somebody else to do it, because that would probably use that up, and they'd be happy, and or we could pay Jesse that money, and he could do it. If I did give you a raise, it might almost cover having the dishes done by someone else. I don't know. How do you want to handle it?
Oh,
Well, so I think this kid deserves a hand. You get the idea here, right?
can I turn it off?
Yeah, thank you. See, the idea here is that we're going to problem solve this thing. I don't have to yell and scream about it. I'm going to run this home in a way that makes me happy. In fact, I only have one rule for my kids, and that is keep Dad happy. That's my rule. See, I'm happy, you're happy. I'm unhappy, there will be vast unhappiness around here. So keep Dad happy. See now, well, that's selfish. You want your house to be happy all that? Right, because I want his kids to keep him happy. That's why. See, I want him to follow in my footsteps and have kids who do their chores, have a high self-image, are respectful, responsible, and fun to be around. So that's why I do this, not to make me feel good, but to improve his future. Because this thing goes on generation after generation after generation, as you know. So, but as a kid in this situation, let me ask you, was the way I was coming through to you okay, or did it make you mad, or you thought it was all right, or really, what's your thought on it?
It made sense.
It made,
Yeah.
See, I mean, someone has to do the job. And I always want what I say, and I never give my opinion about something before I get the kids' opinion, whether it's Nintendo, the video games, whatever it is. I want to get their ideas on it so that, as they teach you in Harvard Business School in Business 101, nobody cares what we think until we first show that we care what they think. See, and I want my kid to always know I care what he thinks. I care what he thinks about the chores, whether or not they're unfair, and he always has the right to protest. See, just as we all have the right to protest in America, but the job has to get done. So thanks a lot, Dave. Appreciate it. Thank you. See, now, I got to admit to you, I want to clarify something. When these kids are small, you don't have any problem in saying, get out there and do the dishes. You haven't done them yet. I don't see what all this thinking, figuring it out is all about. Just tell them to do it, make them do it, and it'll work. And you're right, it will. You can make them do it when they're small, but not when they're in high school, not when they're little. All of a sudden, these kids go through this sudden change and become rebellious. And I want to talk to you a little bit here about, I guess I can use this time to talk a little bit about why teenagers, do any of you here have teenagers? I want to tell you, quite a few of you do, I want to tell you why teenagers are difficult. See, sometimes you say, oh, teenagers are difficult because of the peer group, that makes them difficult. They've always had a peer group. Well, it's the drugs. Kids are always around drugs. Frankly, most of the big drug takers in America are adults. And they take, something to wake up in the morning, relax at night, or whatever. The difference is, this is really the difference. This is hard, but it's true. The thing that makes teenagers difficult is they actually think. That's the problem. Little kids don't think. They just think they think. And they con the adults into thinking they think. But how many of you here have kids like 7 or younger, or 8 or younger even? Any of you? I'll tell you, do an experiment that'll blow your mind about how actually your kid does not think, I mean, go home. You're not going to buy into this, but try it, okay? Go home, lift your kid up under the arms. If I have a little kid here, I always do this. I lift him up under their arms. I go, oh, they're so heavy when you lift them up. Lift him up. All right, Ricky, lay down. Put your legs in the air. Okay, up we go. Lift them by their ankles. Lift them up easily. Stand up again. Strain. All right, Ricky, now, do you have your thinking cap on? This is a tricky question. Can you think about this very carefully? Would you weigh more on a scale? Are you heavier right side up or upside down? Right side up. Well, how do you know that? I don't know. I just do. You say, my kid wouldn't say they were heavier right side up. Yes, they would. See, because they pick up on your belief system. So if you're a Republican, your kids are Republican, and they have Republican beliefs. And if you're a Democrat, your kids have the Democratic belief system. And you don't tell them to think that way. They think like you think because they meet your expectation level. But all of a sudden, like let me give you a typical example. Little kid leaves his coat on the floor on my part of the house. I work hard all day. I come home. Hey, I don't like my part of the home being trashed up, okay? So look, Ricky, if you want to live like a pig, you take your coat up to your room. You can live like a pig up there, but we're not going to live like pigs down here. So take your coat up to your room and live like a pig up there. So what does an 8-year-old do? My coat. He always says I live like a pig. I don't live like a pig. He always says I live like a pig. He goes up to his room, but he's feeling pretty bad. He's feeling down. He's feeling upset. You know why? Because way down deep inside, he knows he lives like a pig. Yes! Oh, the joy of it. See, it's so good, see. Now, same kid. A few years later, he goes through what Piaget called formal operations. Formal operations. All of a sudden, for the first time, they can actually figure things out. See? And so the kid has a different coat because he's probably gone through a growth spurt. Dad probably hasn't changed a bit. Coat's on the floor. Hey, what do you think this is? Some kind of pig pen? We're not going to live like pigs down here. You take it up to your room. If you want to live like a pig up there, you can live like a pig up there. And the kid goes like this. He goes. He's not even sad. He's mad. You know what your problem is, Dad? You know what your problem is? You get too mad over the little things. That's your problem. And you know what else, Dad? One of these days, right up there in the left hemisphere, it's going to blow, Dad. It's going to blow right up there. I didn't blow very well, but you get the point? It's going to blow up there in the left hemisphere. He goes tromping up to his room. He says, hey, you want to know what's really sad, Dad? You know what's really sad? I'm going to say, yes, that's the really sad part. What do I say? Where did he learn to talk like that? Did you hear the way that kid talked to me? Where did he learn that? See, his friends must have taught him that. His friends didn't teach him that. All of a sudden, he can see I'm an idiot. He didn't know that when he was a little kid. Now, all of a sudden, I can't lay my trip on him and make him feel bad about it. All of a sudden, see, this is the thing. Love and Logic teaches, as you all know, or those of you who've taken Love and Logic, that there are 3 types of leadership roles or parenting. Helicopters, consultants, and drill sergeants. Those are the 3 types. And they all work very well when the kids are small. I wish I could say to you, just telling the kids what to do doesn't work, so don't do it. I can't tell them what to do doesn't work, because you know darn well it does work. The problem is you must, when they're teenagers, come through as a consultant parent. That's why so many teenagers are set off to therapy to have some consultant talk to them in a therapeutic way when they're teenagers. You got to come through like a consultant. So what you try and do is to make the kids think and figure things out when they're small so that when they become teenagers, you don't have to change the way you parent at all. You're talking the same way. You're coming through the same way. You're handling them in the same way. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm so worried about when they become teenagers, because there's no change. It's fun. And sometimes when they're teenagers, we don't give them the respect and the responsibility that we should give them, because, guys, we were their parents, and we put very good value systems in those kids. And I remember when a little girl came up to the clinic a long time ago, and she was like 15 or something like that, or 15 or 16, right in that age group. She's crying, see, because all these kids when they see their therapist, they cry when they're mad with their parents at home. She's saying, true story. I don't mean to be offensive. I'm just telling you what the kid said, okay? She said, when I was a little girl, I didn't have to tell my parents where I was every minute. When I was a little girl, they didn't have to know the parents of all my friends. When I was a little girl, I led my own life a lot better than I do now. It's not my fault I grew boobs, Dr. Cline. All girls grow boobs. Right. I mean, these kids curve out and the parents clamp down. There's no doubt about it, see? When what we should be saying is, wait a minute, now they're older. I put in the value system, which is put in by age 11. At age 11 is when the value system gets locked into a kid. And now I'm going to give my kid some certain freedoms to make mistakes so that they can figure things out, so that when they go off to college, they'll do fine without me. Or when they go out there. See, all of you as parents, if you have a teenager, you have to figure out how many years is it until your kid's out of the house. I know some of you are probably thinking, well, if he keeps acting the way he's acting now, it's tomorrow. But no. But just realistically, when is the kid out of the house? 17? Well, I mean, I've seen parents of 16-year-old kids saying, and you be in at 12, and I don't mean 12:02, I mean 12. And who are those friends? And where are you going? And what are you doing? This kid is going off to college, to a co-ed dorm in 2 years? Good luck, Bozo and Bozette. I mean, we got big problems. See, I want my kids as early as possible to do just fine without me. Now, that doesn't mean that I want them for me not to be around, but it means I want them to be able to know that when they go off to college to a co-ed dorm without rules, they can handle it. And the only way I can give them that freedom is to let them start making rules now. Like, what I want to say to a kid about drugs, first of all, one thing I know won't work is don't take drugs, don't take drugs, don't take drugs. It hasn't worked for America. And America lectures on drugs more than any other. Right now in the millennium that we have, every 2 months you will read in the paper, I guarantee you, biggest drug bust ever just took place. And then the next, we're winning the war on drugs. Biggest drug bust ever took place. Well, how can you keep having the biggest drug bust ever and be winning the war on drugs? It does seem a little incongruous, doesn't it, when you really think about it? But we're not doing very well with drugs. And I mean, what I want to say to my kid is, I hope they don't take drugs. Come up and talk to me about it, just for a second. Yeah. What's your name?
Frank.
Frank, come up here. I just want to see, what I know won't work is lecturing, threatening, and demanding, because he's a teenager. And the first thing I want to know is, since you all have gotten the word, is if I want to have a heart-to-heart talk with my kid, what do I start out with first? Is pure what? Questions. So I want to say, Frank, what I want to say is, like, let's say you're 15 or 16 or something like that. I'd say, what's your thought on experimenting with drugs? What's your thought on experimenting with them some? I mean, you can say anything you want. Doesn't matter what you say.
Well, I think I'd like to learn a little bit about it.
Do you think that you might want to experiment a little bit with them?
I think so.
Yeah, I understand that. I think you might. There are a lot of kids who, they might not be that honest with their parent, but they say, yeah, I would like to experiment with it. They would. There's a lot of people who become president that experiment with it. Of course, they don't inhale. That's the difference. Okay, so...
Would you rather...
No, that's fine. So what you're saying is you would like, I thought you might want to experiment with it because ever since you were a little kid, you've liked to experiment with stuff. I mean, you wanted to see how high you could climb and what you could do with the chemistry set and how fast you could, run and how far you could throw the football. I mean, you've always gone for it. And I was thinking that on this drug thing, because you've always been kind of an experimenter, I was thinking that you might think about experimenting with that. That's what I was thinking. So, and I appreciate, one of the things I really want to say, Frank, is I appreciate you being honest about it. Can I tell you how I feel about it? Do you mind?
No.
They never mind. When you first talk to them, you get their ideas. Not like on a witness stand. So how do you feel about it? So then what? But like, well, then what? And then how do you feel about it? And what? See, I always want my kid to know that I will always accept what they say and do. That doesn't mean I approve of what they say or do. And one of the things that certain groups in the United States have gotten confused is the difference between acceptance and approval. I want my kid to know there's nothing he could say to me or do that I couldn't accept. Because once I can't accept it, he'll get control of my emotion. I can't accept that. I've seen parents say, I can't accept it. I just can't accept it. Betsy's pregnant right now, and I can't accept it. It's like, well, Martha, grow up. It's already happened. What do you mean you can't accept it? What you mean is you don't approve of it, but you better accept it and grow up. See? So I give my kid acceptance. So this is the way I feel about drugs. My hope would be that you don't experiment with it. And the reason being is that whenever you did the experiments in the past, like the chemistry set when you blew up the basement and all that kind of stuff that you did, Frank, and you remember the things you experimented with as a kid when you were younger, what part of your body did you use to figure out whether or not it was a good experiment or a bad experiment? How did you figure that out? What part of your anatomy do you use to figure out whether something's good or bad?
My brain.
Right, your brain. But if you took drugs, experiment with them, what part of your body would you be trying to affect, Frank?
My brain.
That's the problem. So here's this great brain of yours. I've always thought it was a lot like mine. I thought it was an amazingly good brain, frankly. So here's this great brain of yours, and you would be affecting it using drugs. And I hope you don't do that, because your brain is the thing that figures out whether it's good or bad. And as good a brain as you have, and you have the best, I think even your brain might not be able to figure out whether it's good or bad if it was affected. Do I make my point clear? The other thing I want to make clear to you, and this is a very important clarification, is how much of the other kid's money and the family estate would we spend pulling you out of the gutter if you do decide to use drugs? Not a red.
None.
Not a red cent. Not a red cent. No. See, we have been using massive pieces of the federal budget to make sure that things go well for people or don't go well, or it's fixed here and there. What I want my kid to know is that I'll never spend your college money or the other kids' college money dragging you out of the gutter. Do you understand what I'm saying? But I love you. Is this hard? It's hard? Hmm?
Oh, darn.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard when you have a kid making a mistake not to rescue him. Now, I'm going to give you the rules for rescue because sometimes we do rescue our kids. But love and logic kids never feel entitled to rescue. That doesn't mean they're not rescued. It means that they never plan on being rescued by their parents. Doesn't mean we don't do things to help them out. Is there anything that this is a low-grade emotional thing for you? Is it because you're on TV, or is it just because you had experience with a drug kid, or what?
I don't know.
It's just the TV. It's the lights.
I kind of cry when I laugh.
Oh, okay. Well, I got to say, Frank deserves a hand for putting up with me up here. Thank you. No, we rescue our kids sometimes. Sure we do. The rule of love and logic for rescue is, which, by the way, works for countries, works for nations, works for groups of people, works for kids. See, one of the things I hope you're getting an idea about here is that love and logic rules are universal. In fact, sometimes when we give a talk, someone will come to us later, and after we come back, they'll say, you know, I tried that stuff on my husband, and it works like magic. You know, I tried that on my wife, and she really listens right now. That's right, because the rules are universal. I do a lot of consulting for big businesses, and my examples are different. But you know, I tell businesses the same things I'm telling you here tonight about you and your kids. They're universal rules. And the universal rule for rescue is that you rescue your kid immediately if life and limb are in immediate danger. You don't watch a kid run out in the street and say, oh, love and logic says learn by experience, here comes the truck. I don't think so. No. You rescue kids if life and limb are in immediate danger. But even when they come older and you start rescuing when life and limb are in immediate danger, if they ever start feeling entitled to rescue, they will get in dangerous situations more and more and more often. Okay, so we can put that one aside. Life and limb are in immediate danger, we rescue. Second thing, main rule for rescue is you can never effectively rescue somebody by going more than halfway for a chronic problem that a person has caused themselves. I'm going to say that one more time because it has so many modifiers in it. It allows us to rescue most people most of the time. Most people you're safe in rescuing. Doesn't mean necessarily it's a wise idea, but you can never effectively go more than halfway for a chronic problem that a person has caused him or herself. So does that mean that we can go like 110% of the way for our little special needs kid or fetal alcohol syndrome, something like that? Does it? Of course. Fetal alcohol syndrome, did they cause it themselves? No. So let's look at an example. True story. It's snowing out in Evergreen. Pretty bad snowstorm. One of my kids says, we're going down to McNichols Arena. They have a big concert down there tonight, and we're going down to the concert. I look out. It's snowing. I say, Andy, are you sure you want to go out on a night like this? It looks really, really bad out on a night like this. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. Well, who are you going with? I'm going with Nate. Nate is kind of a ditzy friend of his that he has. I say, well, how are you getting down there? Oh, we're driving Nate's dad's car. Nate's dad has a lot of money, and so he gives this kid a really nice car. I mean, even IBM doesn't say to some untrained person, here's a $27,000 or $30,000 piece of machinery. Go have fun with it. I don't think so. See, but this dad gave his kid a really, really super nice car, which does not make sense. And sometimes this whole intelligence thing really is genetic. And my kid's going out with the son of this guy, this is not good, from my point of view. It's like, for my kids, whenever they drive, I always got them a really, really old behemoth of a car that they'd say, oh, but it only gets about 10 gallons per mile. And I say, yeah, because they're paying for the gas. It's so great. So it's just a wonderful thing. And, they have this big car, and it sort of protects them. I feel sorry for the person in the Honda, but, they got this old Buick or whatever it is. And I always try and get it kind of dented up and everything so that it'll look symmetrical when they make their mistakes, see? Because it's so much fun to go out with your kid and say, hey, this car's starting to look symmetrical. It's definite improvement. You only had one fender to go and you got it. That's great, see? So he's going down to Denver, and his dad's nice little whatever it was. I think it was a Porsche, actually. See, on a snowy night. So I say, I don't think this is a very good idea. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. Now we have to ask ourselves, are life and limb in probable? The word there is probable immediate danger. The answer really is no. Not that many people get killed on a snowy night in Denver. There's a lot of accidents, but where people like to get killed is when they're going down the highway 60 miles an hour and the sun's in their eyes or something like that. You could just get a lot of fender benders when it's snowy. But there would be probably a few people killed that night in Denver. But millions might be driving, so my kid will probably survive. So I say, well, I don't think it's a very good idea, but if that's what you guys want to do, I don't think it's a very good idea. Go. Again, prayer. Please let this go bad. Please let it go bad. Prayer helps. So they go. My wife and I are sleeping. It's about, 12:30, 12 o'clock at night. It's very late, whatever it is. Ring, 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 phone rings. Dad! Kind of a shaky voice. It's Andy. Oh, well, hi, Andy. How you doing? Good to hear from you. Dad, we're at El Rancho. That's great, Andy. So you're stopping by for some coffee or something like that? Dad, the car's in the ditch. Yes, prayers answered. So, but, I mean, what do we immediately? Oh, that's too bad, you know. And I'm rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, and he's saying, could you please come down and winch us out? He says, could you please come down and winch us out? So I'm thinking about love and logic rule. You never go more than halfway for a chronic problem. Is getting out of bed at 12:30 at night from a warm wife going more than halfway and winching a kid out of a ditch. Is that going more? Depends on the wife, right? No, it is. Obviously, okay? I mean, let's just say it like it is here, okay? So, yeah, it's going more than halfway. So, say, well, do I want to go more? Do I want to, you know? And then I remember saying, well, I thought you were going in the other car. And he says, I said, well, who was driving? He says, well, Nate was driving. I said, well, don't you have the wrong daddy? I mean, why am I even getting called on this, you know? Nate's driving. He says, oh, Dad. He says, Nate's father will get mad at him, and he'll come down and winch him out, and then he'll be mad for 2 weeks, and it'll just make their relationship a lot worse, and I would really appreciate it if you could come down. I'd really appreciate it if you could come down and winch us out. So now the question is, should I? And we follow the love and logic rules. See, because a lot of people hear love and logic, they say, oh, you never rescue your kid, you never. No, we're saying rescue, you can never rescue your kid to the point they feel entitled to it. Now, the first thing I know is Andy doesn't feel entitled. You know, how do I know he doesn't feel entitled? Because how? Because he said, Dad, will you please? I mean, I dealt with kids who talk to their parents like this. Hi, Mom, yeah, I forgot my algebra book. You need to bring it down to me by 6th period. Yeah, because that's what my algebra test is. Okay, thanks, bye. You need to do it. Give me a break. I don't need to do squat. What do you mean? And he says, Dad, we're in the ditch, you know, you need to come down, winch us out. No. There are lots of groups of people in the United States right now say, you need to rescue us. And they're rescued. But you cannot successfully rescue when people feel entitled to rescue. Then it won't work. You can rescue them, but it won't help them grow, is what I'm trying to say. It won't make a difference in their lives on a psychological basis. But you can do it. It will help them temporarily. So he doesn't feel entitled. I would be going more than halfway. Now we have to ask ourselves, first of all, did he cause this? It was his friend who was driving. Did he cause this? Is this a problem he caused himself? How many people say yes? How many people say no? Yeah. You know a person by the people you run with. Don't tell me, like, oh, I was just standing there watching when the store was robbed, but I didn't go in. No. If my kid runs with a group who does bad things, I'm not going to go running down and say to some public defender, but it wasn't my kid, it wasn't my kid. He's with them, they do it. So one of the things I want you to know right away, if you're my kid and your group gets into trouble, you'll be in trouble. I'm really sorry about that, but everybody has to choose who they run with. And you guys will have to choose too. So you have to make some heavy decisions, because if you get into trouble with bad people, then probably some of their problems will rub off on you. I'm real sad about that, but hey, give them the can-do message. Anybody can handle a year or two in detention, it's you, you know? I mean, you can always handle it. I mean, you're just the type of kid who can handle tough times, you know? So I give my kids the can-do message. So, yeah, he caused it. It's his friend. They made the decision together to drive down. He wasn't driving, but he did it. Now, but for what kind of problem? Chronic. Now, if that car going into the ditch is just one more example of Andy driving off the road of life. See, he cuts classes, now he's in the ditch. One more example of driving off the road of life. That makes it a what kind of problem, group? Chronic. But it wasn't. And he's a really nice, responsible, super thoughtful, usually with a brain kid. So, no, this is not a chronic problem. He's generally making responsible decisions. That makes this problem acute. So I could go down there and pull him out. Now I can decide whether I do or not. And I decide, yeah, I'll go down. Mainly because, I got to tell you, when you go down there and you look at that stupid little car wound around a tree, it's just so enjoyable to, oh, that's too bad. See, and so if you get your kid the right car, you can always enjoy their accident, see? And you always put your arm around them and say, "Gall, you know, this is such a bummer. Your insurance will go shooting right through the roof, you know. But if anyone can work harder and make more money, it's you, you know. So it'll all work out, not to worry about it." See, because for my kids, I always paid good guy car insurance. Good guy car insurance means that they don't have any tickets, they take driver's ed, they do this, they do all those things, so that if they do something stupid and they get a ticket, I don't have to get mad at them. I just put my arm around and say, "Oh, man, your insurance is going to go right through the roof. But you can handle another $100 or two, not a problem for a kid like you, you know. A little more hard work, a little bit more pain, but you handle pain well. You cause a lot of it for yourself, you handle it well, it's good." So I go down there, and I'm winching this car out, and the other kid is feeling real bad about it, and he's saying, "Geez," he said, you know, and I put my arm around him, and I said, "Don't worry about it." I said, "On a road that's banked like this, you know, and it's not banked very well on a curve," I said, "anybody could have gone off this curve, so that could have happened to anybody." But you know then what both kids said, almost like they were Bobbsey twins? When I said, "Oh, don't worry about it, anybody could have gone off a curve like this." "Yeah, but this was probably a pretty stupid night to go out in, and we probably shouldn't have gone anyway." Oh, wise teenagers. See? You always want them to get to themselves to say that stuff so it comes from inside them rather than you're saying it. And they do. They make new decisions and they say this wasn't very wise, but it only works if they don't feel entitled to rescue. If you raise kids who feel entitled to your rescue when they mess up, you will have kids who mess up quite a bit. I would just want to say that. So I want you to have the ability to rescue them, but I don't want you to feel like you have to rescue them. All right. I think that I covered everything except one thing I want to say, since many of you are young parents here, a little bit of developmental stuff that is super important. By age 2, all kids, and I'm not going to spend very much time on this because we have a lot of Love and Logic tapes on it. By age 2, all kids ought to have down pat, without a doubt, basic German Shepherd. Come, sit, go, no, stay. You know, very important. And if you have a 2 or a 3-year-old kid who does not have come, sit, go, no, stay, you're setting yourself up for very difficult times as a teenager. Because a teenager is a 2-year-old with hormones and wheels. And that's true. And we have a tape out on that, see? Because the thing in life is the same thing. It's autonomy and independence. It's autonomy and independence at 2, and it's autonomy and independence when they're a teenager. So whether they're 2 or whether they're a teenager, the question is, how far can I go? What can I do? How will my parents say no to me? When will they say no? What can I do? The cupboards that they want to get into, let us say, are a little bit different when they're a teenager than when they're a 2-year-old, if you get my drift. But the point is, the process is the same. So you see someone with an out-of-control 3 or 4-year-old kid, they're probably going to have an out-of-control teenager, all things being equal, unless they make some pretty solid changes in the way they parent between the time the kid is a toddler and the time the kid is a teen. So we'll put that aside for a minute on come, sit, go, no, stay. I want to talk to you a little bit about 3 and 4, because age 3 and 4 is the age of initiative and industry. No time in a kid's life are they more excited about doing something than they are 3 and 4. And in fact, my age group, when we got bored, would always say to our parents, long time ago in the dark ages of the 40s and 50s, for some of you younger parents, we would always say, "What can I do?" Modern kids, I'm sorry to say, don't say, "What can I do?" They say, What can I watch? They really do. And there's a lot of young parents out there who say, I don't let my kids watch sex and violence on TV because it's not good for them. But up in our bedroom, we have all the good stuff for kids. We have Sesame Street, we have The Little Mermaid, and we have all the Disney videotapes because I want my kid to watch the good stuff. And this is what I want to say to all you young parents. It's so important. It's not what they watch. It's that they watch. And it's that they watch at a critical age. And the critical age is 3 to 6. And the rule of thumb is, see, because right now we have a problem in our school system and all across the nation, and it's called ADD. It's an epidemic. But it's not ADD. ADD stands for, what does it stand for? Attention deficit disorder. But most of the kids who are diagnosed ADD have no problem with attention at all. They watch TV fine. They play video games fine. In fact, when a teacher wants to settle them down, she puts up a TV set. They do fine with attention. They have intention problems. Intention means getting a job done. As long as the teacher has a magician in, or a clown, or they have video games, or they have TV, or they have something to watch, these kids do fine. It's only when the teacher says, now guys, what we're going to do are the even numbers at the end of the book. It's only when the teacher tells them to do something that they fragment. They fragment on getting a job done. And I'm here telling you young Americans that the reason for this and the reason of the massive increase in ADD did not happen with the onset of TV. It happened with the onset of quality, quote, quality videotapes for kids. That's when it happened. Quality videotapes for kids so that young parents can feel good about their kid watching something that, quote, teaches them something, but what's the kid not doing? At a critical age of brain development. And brain development works at critical ages. So if you don't learn to speak right at 2 and you have a speech impediment, you have a lisp at age 7. And it doesn't matter if the kid had their ears drained at 3 and they've been hearing people talk just fine between 3 and 7, they still have a lisp. They're still hard to understand because at the critical age of 2, they weren't hearing correctly. And what I'm saying is, you plop a kid down in front of a TV set, 3 to 6, and they watch. What are they not getting? They're not getting all the intention stuff. Getting a job done, being creative, looking at what they want to do, feeling good about accomplishment. All the things that a school requires. Now these kids go off to school, and the only thing the teachers know how to do is show them a videotape so that they learn something. Because they're sure not going to sit there and do their work, a lot of them. And so the dangerous years are 2 to 5 to 6. And your kid's in danger, as far as I'm concerned, if they spend more time watching things at home than they spend doing things. And there's a lot of young parents, and some of you may be in that category, where you put stuff up on the refrigerator. Is the stuff the kids have done. A lot of the stuff that goes up on the refrigerator in a lot of young homes that I walk into, they're all the things the kids have done at church or at school because they don't do anything at home. The only thing they do at home is watch TV. And there's a lot of young parents now. You guys, you see, during the critical period, you grew up with TV. So now when you want to have a quality time with your son or daughter, you don't say, let's go out and make a boat. Let's go out and have a tin can telephone. Let's go make a kite and fly it. You say, because of the way you grew up, oh, I have free time. I want quality time with my kid. Let's go watch a game together. Let's figure out what we can watch together. And we have become a nation of watchers. And let's be clear that it's what we do in our free time, our leisure time, that makes the great accomplishers from the people who aren't great accomplishers. Because we all work hard at work. Obviously, we're not watching TV at work. But the question is, how do you use your leisure time, and how do your kids use their leisure time? So my thought was, and I know when my kids were small, I'd always say something like this to them when they were 3 or 4. This was one of their favorites. I'd pick up a chair like this, and I'd say, hey, see this chair? Yeah, I bet you can't cover this entire chair with masking tape. so that I cannot see one little bit of it within the next 2 hours. I can't do. Well, we'll see. They'll work on covering a chair with masking tape for hours. Make sure there's not one little spot left, and then you go to them, aha, I see a spot. Right there, I see a spot. Oh, no. They'll go back and work on it for a while, you know. And masking tape pulls right off. See, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they're sewing buttons or, this is really a sad but true, it sounds pathetic, but it's kind of nice, but it's kind of one of those. My son, who is 30, lives up in Spokane, came by and he says, Mom, I brought some pants in. He said they need buttons. She says, oh, okay. She says, well, you know, I mean, he's 30. She says, I can find something to sew them on. He says, I don't want you to sew them on. I want to sew them on. Isn't that pathetic? But he has a mother who's willing to sew buttons and he wants to sew it. But that's because during the critical age of 3 to 6, one of the things he was given to do was a big can of buttons and learn to sew buttons, different sizes, different shapes, put them on. I mean, he had a great button collection. I mean, here he is 30, he still wants to sew on his own buttons. Isn't that pathetic? I mean, I suppose he's a wife's dream from that standpoint. But, you know, the point is you get your kids used to doing stuff and having fun when they're small. And when they're 3, 4, and 5, you give them 3 things. You give them the job, and you give them you, and you give them fun. That's the 3 things you give them. You have a job. They don't do it by themselves. You have to make the bed with them. You have to wash the dishes with them. But you have 3 things, the job, fun, and you. And then when they get to be 6 and 7, kindergarten, depending on their maturity, 1st grade, 2nd grade, kindergarten, somewhere in there, see, then you take 2 steps back, and they have the job and fun, and you're out of it. It's just beautiful. Oh, go to it, children, see? Oh, what fun, what fun. It's a great thing, but it starts pretty early. And when Andy was in college, true story, came home, and we always love our kids to come home because then my wife and I have a free telephone answering machine, free dish clearer, free dishwasher, free wood choppers. I mean, it's just great to have the kids come home because they all go back to their own job, just like he still wants to sew buttons, you know. I mean, all this early stuff is still in their little brain, see? And so Andy's jumping up, and he's doing the dishes, and Herman and I are sitting there having coffee, enjoying the fact the dishes are being done, and having the kids there and everything. And he's doing the dishes, and he says, Dad, he says to me, and I say, yeah. He says, Dad, he says, you know, when I do the dishes, he says, I still hear the bugs scream. I said, you're kidding, Andy. And he says, no, I do. See, because when he was a little boy, that when we would do the dishes together, if you pick up the dishes and you listen closely, you can hear this chomp, 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 chomp. It's the germs on the plate, the germs, germs, germs. And germs only do 2 things. I mean, this is true about germs. They eat and they eat and they eat and they have sex and make more germs. So 100 germs become 1,000, 1,000 become 10,000, 10,000 becomes quadrillion. So if you let germs sit around, I mean, just pretty soon you just have cities of germs, see? So then you take the plate up to the sink and you turn on the water, and if you listen closely, ew, this waterfall, I hate water. That's because germs really, they all hate water. Ew, get this water off me, I hate water. Then you put the Joy on them, or the soap. Ah, my skin! That's when these guys really scream, is when you put soap on them, it drives them crazy. So you listen to that, and then they go off, ooh, what's this big silver thing here? And they're in the sink, and then you put the water on. Ah, the river is coming, the river is coming. Ah. Then you can listen to them down in the disposer if you listen closely. They say, what's this big round room here? What's this big round room doing? I can't see a thing in here, it's all dark. Then, this is the really fun part. This is really the fun part. You turn on the disposer. Ah! They get crushed to bits. And you can hear them screaming all the way to the septic tank. They're screaming, see? So here he is, okay? 23 years old. He's still hearing the germs scream. Isn't that great? You know? Isn't it great? See, it's this early stuff that you put in them that sticks. Because, see, this stuff is so easy, and it's so implementable, and it's so life-changing, and it makes things with your kids go so much better, see? But I'll tell you how this stuff gets locked in them when they're early. Andy, my oldest son, who's now near 40, was a Knowles instructor and worked with the Koyaki. Knowles is National Outdoor Leadership School, you know, and I mean, gets people off of places they shouldn't be in the first place, winter survival and crazy climbing and all that kind of stuff, see? But he's a tough kid, and he's pure muscle, and he does a triathlon and all that, you know. So, but when Andy was small, we lived on Mercer Island on a lake in Washington. And we always played King of the Dock when he was like 3 or 4. And I mean, I tried to go easy on the kid, but it's really just easy to pop him in the water, you know. And then all the kids in the neighborhood get out. You still pop them in the water, you know. And so I would pop them all in the water. Okay, they were like 3 to 6, 7 years old, whatever they were. Well, and then when Winfield, our last son, was born, we were up in Evergreen, and we weren't near water that you could play in that much. So we never played King of the Dock and stuff like that. So last summer, we were up on Lake Pend Oreille in Idaho, where we live now, and we're on the dock, and we decided it'd be fun to play King of the Dock, okay? So all the kids are playing, and I'm there looking out of shape, fat, kind of pathetic, obviously. See, here's Andy, triathlon man and all that. I say, all right, King of the Dock! And I take 4 steps toward Andy, and he says, no, Dad! And he jumps in the water, see? And I saw on my youngest son's face, and he's 32, this look of utter shock. Like, he can't figure it out. All I did was take 2 steps toward Andy and say, die, Andy, and he's off the deck, you know. He could probably take me with one hand and throw me across the lake, you know. But see, this early stuff sticks. It sticks. And so you kid them with the right thing at the right time, and by the time they're teenagers, you're kind of home free. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't get in with a bad group or they can't get into drugs or stuff like that, but it means it's a lot less likely. So what you do is you go out there, and you say, my main rule is I want to operate this home in a way that's fun for me. And it changes the way you talk about everything. I'm planning, what's your name here? Susie. I'm planning on going to Disneyland this summer, and I really want to have a good time, and so I've been seriously considering taking you. See, as soon as you look at your kids and you say, I've been seriously considering taking you someplace, all of a sudden it sort of takes some of that whole entitlement away. But I have been seriously considering taking you to Disneyland. But then I've been giving it more thought, and I've been wondering, how do you plan on making it more fun for me? See? See what I mean? See how all of a sudden your thinking changes? Now, this is hard for some people, for the parents to put themselves first in a loving way, especially if they grew up in a dysfunctional family. See, because when I stand up here in front of you and say, I only have one rule for my kids, keep Dad happy, then there might be a few guys, and particularly gals in the group, that are turned, and their stomach just goes, because this guy stands up in front of us and says their job is to keep Dad happy because they were either physically abused or sexually abused or psychologically abused, and they immediately go back into their dysfunctional childhood, and they say, that's mean, that's not nice. If my dad had said I was supposed to keep him happy all the time, I would have been abused every minute, and all of a sudden, because of their dysfunctional background, they run into a huge roadblock on rule number 1. And that is that the kids are there in a win-win way to help enrich the parent's life, just as the parents are there to enrich the kid's life. It's a two-way street. But you should not be raising kids who make your lives less rich. And you have to decide what your expectations are of your kids. And you have to decide, I deserve feeling great. These kids may not realize it yet. My dad might not have realized it. My mom might not have realized it, but I realize it, and guess what, guys? I'm laying that trip on you. And all of a sudden, you realize that you raise kids who really are respectful, or they're not around as much, you know, in one way or another, that you do things to take care of yourself. And you say to your kids tonight and tomorrow when you go home, guys, I love you. No matter what you do, I love you. No matter what you say, I love you. No matter how you handle your life, I love you. That doesn't mean I have to live with you forever, that's for sure, but I love you no matter what. If you have any questions, do ask. Your mom or your dad is a font of wisdom, So should you want to know anything, do ask me. And then you look at your kids and you give them a hug and you say, good luck. And then you look at certain kids and you say, honey, in your case, lots of luck. Because if anyone needed lots of luck, it's you. Okay, God bless. Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure being with you here tonight. Appreciate it.